This is the Keurig B70 single cup coffee maker, and it has one of the common problems that these coffee makers are known for. A water leak. Now this particular water leak is coming from between the water tank and the base that it sits upon. I attempted to fix this leak once before, and I made a YouTube video about that. I came across a YouTube video in which this guy had the same problem, and he corrected it by putting an O-ring around the outlet here. So I put an O-ring on mine like he did. Unfortunately, it didn't really stop the leak. And I figured the problem was that this O-ring tended to lift up the water tank and make it rock up, back and forth. And when it rocked forward, it seemed to leak worse than it was back. Now this is a close-up of the base that the water tank sits on. And this is the water inlet. This is where the leak is originating from. I figured by putting some sort of a standoff on the front, it would tend to make the water tank sit level, and that would tend to put more even pressure on the O-ring and hopefully make it work better. And after doing that, it did work for about 6 weeks. And then it started leaking again, slowly at first, but getting faster and faster. Now it's time to take a closer look at exactly what is going on in here. So I decided to open up the machine and have a look. I've laid the machine on its side and exposed the undersurface. In order to have a look at that inner tubing, we're going to have to remove this plate. And it's held on with 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we will go ahead and remove those now. You might have to pry it just a little bit here. It's got a couple little tabs right here that sort of hold it, so you pry it off on the back and then sort of slide it this way. And off it comes. Now here is that tubing leading to the outflow. And it feeds into this electric motor, which then pumps the fluid up into the rest of the machine. Now it's held on by these 2 screws and that circular metal clip. We'll take that off now. You got this one piece of tubing over this piece of tubing. Okay, it's off. One thing I notice is there's a little gash right there. It's actually kind of split right there. I suspect that that's where our leak is coming from. Possibly the reason that the O-ring sort of worked at first and then failed, and then when it was balanced, it seemed to work and then failed again. I suspect that maybe this little gash there is extending, getting longer, getting worse. Maybe that's what's happening. I decided at this point to bite the bullet and just replace this entire unit. Now here's the replacement unit. These can be found on eBay, usually in the neighborhood of $15 or so. They're only really available used. One of my complaints about Keurig and their products is they seem to have a fairly high failure rate. They're very hard to work on, actually. The third problem is they really don't make parts available. This part here is going to be exposed to mechanical trauma. Every time you push that tank on and off, this surface is going to get a certain amount of wear, and eventually it's going to fail. Like any washer designed to hold back water, it's eventually going to fail. Why don't they make a replacement available? To the best of my knowledge, you cannot buy one of these from Keurig. You basically have to go to eBay or someplace and see if you can find a used one in good shape. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and put that replacement on. Okay, the new receptacle and tubing is back in place. And we will now put the bottom back on. Now with the plate back on and tucked under these different little tabs here, we're now going to put those 5 screws back on. Probably best to start them manually because they're going into this soft plastic and it does have a tendency to cross thread if you're not careful. Now we have the new inlet seal and tubing in place. I've taken the rubber gasket off of the water tank and I'm going to drop it back into place and see if it holds. Now this is a follow-up. This video clip is being made 3.5 months after replacing the water inlet on the Keurig. And I'm happy to report there has not been a single drop of leakage. It has been 100% watertight. So we have confirmed that the problem is a failed water inlet, and the definitive fix is to replace that water inlet. And once again, this is what that part looks like. Ours has a little gash right there in that ring. And that's probably just caused by repeated use. The repeated mechanical trauma of plugging that water tank into that water receptacle over and over again. Eventually you're going to wear this out and cause it to crack and break, and that's what we have. It's really a shame that they don't make these things available for repair. If you need one, possibly you can find one on eBay that's being cannibalized out of another machine. So we have confirmed that the replacement of this water inlet is the definitive fix for that water leak.